So I did my undergraduate degree at Concordia University in Montreal, and after my first or second year, I became the president of the very exciting Religion Students Association, which was a big deal because I had like my own office and a lot of power. I didn't have power. There was like 6 people as a part of the association. However, I got spotted at the laundromat the other day. Some guy was like, "Hey, weren't you president of the Concordia Religion Students Association 12 years ago?" And I was like, "That's right." That was me. I threw those potlucks and those dialogues. So I was really involved in that, and from that, I was also part of other student associations, and I got recruited to be on the student council at Concordia in the early 2000s, which was like very exciting. I'm not a political person. It's not something I really understand. But I was really encouraged by a couple friends who knew of my brilliant work in the religion department, hosting the chili and beer events. And they were like, "You should be on student council. We want you to run with us." And I just said, okay. And my big idea was like, you know what? If I'm on student council, I'm going to make sure that they use less paper during the elections next year because I find it wasteful. This was like my big platform in my head because, you know, the school gets covered in all these posters and it just seemed unnecessary. I didn't know that I was like secretly running on a different slate, which was because of my face, as it happens. I agree to be on student council. Somebody takes my photograph one day. I thought it was like for the paper or something, just to show all the people who were running. And there was a lot of people running because it was a super hot council. It was like, you know, Concordia. It was like a hotbed of interesting activity. And I come to school the next day and my face is all over campus with a lot of paper, which I was very conflicted about because that was my whole platform. And I'm like, oh no, I'm a hack. And all these people's, and Concordia, I should tell you the structure of it, it's not like pretty U of T with their grass and their buildings and the people enjoying themselves outside. It's a big office building downtown, and it's awful. And so you're always in this one building. And I had all of these people coming up to me over the course of the week being like, "Hey, I'm totally gonna vote for you." And I was like, "Thanks." Must have read my interview about my environmental stance. And I found out afterwards, eventually someone said, "You know why everybody's voting for you?" I was like, I really have no idea. He's like, "It's because nobody can tell if you're Jewish or Arab." And I was like, oh, as it happens, I'm both. So it was my face that actually I was being used for politics to run on this slate. Anyways, I get into student council. Miraculous. I have no idea how it happens. I just figure it's because of my face and the color of my skin. Take that, KKK. Just gonna say, fuck you. I'm making changes. Jewish and brown. Anyways, I'm so affected by that story. It's so upsetting. So I get into student council. Summer happens. We come back to school the next year. It's September. I'm so excited to get involved. And maybe some of you weren't paying attention to what was happening at Concordia at that time, but this was right at the start of the Second Intifada in Israel and Palestine. And Montreal has a very large Arab population. The Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights Organization was really strong on campus, as was Hillel, the Jewish student group. And the mezzanine of this big office building was like the hotbed of, activity. It's where students were having booths all the time. Both of these student groups had booths up every day at lunch, and you could go and interact with them and yell at each other all the time if you wanted, which I thought was great. It was super exciting. And so I was on student council. Maybe we had one meeting, and then this thing happened where the Jewish Student Union invites Benjamin Netanyahu to come and speak at Concordia. Does anybody remember this event?
We were at school together. How did we not know this?
How did you not vote for me is what I want to know. It's so embarrassing for Alicia. I don't know. Yeah, I was like in the movie Discordia. Okay, I wasn't in the movie, my hand was. There was a documentary made at the time about the student council because it was such a fascinating time to be at school. So they invite Benjamin Netanyahu to come and speak, and then there's a riot. I wouldn't call it a riot. There was some violence, there was a lot of aggression, there was a lot of yelling, there was spitting, one glass was broken, and essentially Netanyahu wasn't allowed to speak because there was so much resistance to it. And I just thought this was great. I was like, what an interesting university. I'm having such an interesting learning experience. And this may cause problems, but in my opinion, I was like, you got to be foolish to invite Netanyahu to come and speak at this school or any school. I was personally against it. However, I maintained to my platform of environmentalism on the student council. So then we start having meetings. Things are really actually very tense at the university. A lot of really interesting events happen. At the time, we're 21 years old, okay? 21 years old, being interviewed by the media. Everybody wants to know what we think. Not me, like there's a documentary, you can watch it for free online on NFB, called Discordia, which profiles the whole thing at the time, and it's amazing. It's like such a fun watch because you get to see like the rise of the young lefties and on both sides and how they communicate with each other, and I loved it. I watched it again the other day. I saw my hand in it. A lot of things happened at that time, and I was learning a lot watching, and my family was reacting very, very strongly and very concerned about the obsessive violence taking place. You know, this was being covered on international news all over the place. BBC, Al Jazeera, Concordia was all over the map. And me and my little Religion Students Association office is like, what do I do? Eventually, somebody figures out that I'm part of this like interfaithy association. And so I get interviewed by the news, and they ask me what I think about it right after the rector of the university decided to put a moratorium on all conversation involving the Middle East. What a great way to bring people together. I was, of course, highly opposed. I was involved in a lot of interfaith dialogue, especially between Jews, Christians, and Muslims at that time. And so I became this, like, you know, spokesperson and had just, like, really brilliant 30 seconds on television. Which only my family watched and responded to. And everybody else on student council, I found out, because I only ever spoke about the paper on the board because I was too nervous to actually speak out politically. There was a rumor going around that I heard from somebody else that I was actually an undercover secret Zionist, which I was not. I was then called a self-hating Jew, which is I don't know if you know about that term, you should Google it, it's really upsetting. Which I'm also not. It was this time of complex identity for me, and also really discovering my relationship to politics. Time passes, things quiet down, the moratorium exists, which is just ridiculous because the tension is so big. And because I was such a keener, I was also involved in this arts organization. We had this massive art fair, which to me felt basically it felt like the people who must run TIFF, for example. It was called Art Matters, and I really felt it mattered. And at the time, it really, really did. We had art exhibitions all over the city. And so I was helping curate the show for the main mezzanine, where Hillel and the Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights organizations were starting to be able to, they were getting permission to be able to have their tables again to recruit and dialogue. So my friend and I decided, with all the submissions that we got, that we should put there an 8-foot painting that somebody had submitted of George Bush with the Twin Towers coming out of his pants. This so controversial and so hot, you know? 9/11 had just happened a year previous. We're like, let's be subversive. We're 21 years old. So the thing goes up. We feel super proud of ourselves. We're like, this is really interesting. It's so important, and it's happening right in the hotbed of conflict at Concordia. An alumni comes in and vandalizes the painting and tears it down with his little kid with him. Again, more media attention, and then suddenly, the arts kids, we're all getting, interviewed again, not knowing what to do about it. We're just, sitting eating bagels on the floor, just watching it. We're like, let's just let dialogue happen. You know, it's just we live in Canada, let's just let it we're just gonna let it happen. Dumb. Because things did start to get a little bit violent and so heated. So that was the fire. You know, it was all fire, actually. The ice was the violence for me because I was watching a representative from each of these student groups really have it out. They were getting so angry and so upset and so, it's not irrational because they were rational, because somehow this portrait reflected everything that was happening in Israel and Palestine for them. Anything that happened in the university, a new cafe, anything was about Israel and Palestine at that time. Everything was about that because it was so charged for the students there, and they had no place to get it out. So I'm watching these two young men, and I'm watching their fists. They have fists that are just building. And this was my moment. I was president of the Religion Students Association. And I go up to them, And I tell my friend Craig, I was like, you gotta go get some paper. And we had covered the floor underneath the now vandalized painting with brown paper. And I was holding a marker. And I was like, you two, what about if you wrote how you were feeling instead of arguing? And they just looked at me and they were like, okay. And then what happened for 3 days while I got to sit and eat bagels on the floor is people started pouring out all of their responses to this piece, all of their responses to the moratorium onto these brown papers on the floor. It was basically the highlight of my career as like a peacemaker, an interfaith, anything. I don't know if you understand what a big deal it was. I actually stopped violence with a pen. I don't know if you've done that. Anyways, it was like, that was really it. It was the highlight. It was like these major, major moments of political understanding. I've not done anything political since because I realized that I'm too much of a wimp and I'm too much of a peacemaker to actually speak out in any real way in a political context. But those days at Concordia, oh, which by the way, Gaza U became an actual slang term that was used to me when my nephew had his circumcision at his bris, which is a whole other story of perhaps religious trauma as an idea for a theme. Totally traumatized, weeping hysterically, yelling at the religious man who cut my nephew. Then my dad's colleague comes up to me. It happens at like 8 a.m, you know, and he's like, so I hear you're studying at Gaza U. And I was like, don't call it that. You know, it was really offensive to me. Anyways, that's all. It's my story.